This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw in Jerusalem, Roger Mudd in Washington, and commentary by John Chancellor.
Good evening. After weeks of generally muted reaction to the Middle East war, the White House said today, in effect, that President Reagan finally blew his top. They said he called Prime Minister Begin and, in his harshest language to date, expressed his outrage at today's Israeli shelling of Beirut. The shelling was the heaviest of the 9-week war. It continued until almost 4:30 in the afternoon Beirut time, and it made negotiations between the PLO, the Lebanese, and the U.S. physically dangerous. Those talks were suspended and are expected to resume in the morning. Beirut police said today's shelling killed 128 and wounded 400. It is not clear what effect the president's phone call had on Prime Minister Begin, because the White House knew before the two men talked that Israel had already stopped its bombing of Beirut. What is clear is the administration's growing frustration at not being able to control events in the Middle East. Judy Woodruff reports.
The president called Prime Minister Begin to express what White House officials described as shock and outrage at today's attack, and to warn that the relationship between the United States and Israel was at stake if the bombing were not stopped. Later, the White House made public details of the 10-minute conversation, saying the president emphasized that Israel's action had halted the Habib peace negotiations just when they were at the point of success, and that the result had been more needless destruction and bloodshed. One official said Mr. Reagan called the Israeli response out of proportion to any ceasefire violation. 20 minutes after that call ended, Begin called Mr. Reagan back to say that a new ceasefire had been ordered. The White House also announced that before his call to Begin, the president received a call from King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, who was also upset over the situation in West Beirut. White House officials say the president did not threaten Begin with any sort of retaliation. In fact, officials here are frustrated by the continuing perception that they are powerless to influence the Israelis. They believe that appeal after appeal to exercise restraint has fallen on deaf ears, and they say that today's decision to criticize Israel publicly came because the bombing seemed so senseless at a time when a peace settlement seems so close. One official also conceded that this sort of tough talk comes easier to the president now that public opinion polls, which are watched closely here, show a growing American impatience with Israel's aggressiveness. Judy Woodruff, NBC News at the White House.
Despite the White House disclaimers of any Reagan threats, Israeli radio reported today the president told Begin that Ambassador Habib would be ordered home if the bombing continued. Tom?
The pressure from President Reagan had immediate results here in Jerusalem. The Begin government suspended airstrikes against Beirut and cracked down on hard-nosed Defense Minister Ariel Sharon. This showdown over the bombing policy has been coming all week. A number of leading Israeli politicians have been privately concerned that the negotiations would collapse if the airstrikes continue, and then Israel would be blamed. The day began with a rancorous debate in the Knesset. When Prime Minister Begin appeared to defend his government's policies, two communist members of the parliament protested so loudly they were removed. But the meaningful fireworks came later during a closed meeting of Begin's cabinet. Defense Minister Sharon outlined a plan for Israeli forces to move forward in Beirut. He said the new positions would make it more difficult for the PLO to cheat on the evacuation plan. Other cabinet members exploded, accusing Sharon of running his own war. They said Sharon didn't even tell Begin before ordering the attacks of the last 2 days. They said that Israel was destroying its image in the world. Through it all, Begin sat quietly, not defending his defense minister. Tonight, a source very close to the prime minister said Begin admires Sharon, but he thinks of him as a wild horse which needs to be ridden. And Begin wants President Reagan to know that he has this wild horse under control. The vote in the cabinet against Sharon was 15-2. Israel will continue to respond to PLO fire, but from now on, Prime Minister Begin will personally order the operations and not leave them to Defense Minister Sharon. Today's airstrikes, however, were ordered by Sharon, and they were devastating. James Compton now in West Beirut.
Lebanon hadn't seen an attack like this one since the Israelis first invaded 9 weeks ago. The Lebanese government said there were nearly 100 air raids by Israeli jets, and estimated there were 300 killed and wounded. The most concentrated and sustained bombing of the war destroyed dozens of buildings. The attacks, which once seemed designed to put pressure on the diplomatic process, today seem bent on destroying the last vestiges of Palestinian military power in West Beirut. Bombs fell on the athletic stadium and on refugee camps. In the afternoon, heavy Israeli guns opened fire from positions in East Beirut near the dividing line with West Beirut. Israeli troops trying to push forward to the museum at the crossing point ran into heavy resistance. The city was virtually sealed off from the outside. Lebanese officials who have negotiated the proposed Palestinian withdrawal were bewildered by the intense Israeli assault. Prime Minister Shafik al-Wazan said, "We can't understand this escalation when agreement has been reached." He said, "With optimism everywhere, we cannot see any reason for the outburst of bombing in which thousands of tons of bombs have dropped on West Beirut." James Compton, NBC News, West Beirut.
Even if this new Israeli policy of a more measured response to PLO fire holds, the evacuation agreement still has a long way to go. The Israeli government still wants a list of what PLO fighters will go to which Arab countries. And Prime Minister Begin still is not happy with the role of the French peacekeeping force. And then there is this troubling question. Once the evacuation gets underway, what if someone starts shooting? What then?
You're looking at the king of pickups, Ford. And here's the heir to the throne, Ford's new size Ranger. As you can see, Ranger's smaller than the King, but it's built like the big one, with tough twin I-beam suspension and strong double-wall box sides, and the widest cab of all the small pickups. But Ranger saves like the small ones, with gas mileage ratings this high. Long live the King. Long live Ranger. Save hundreds during Ford's factory-authorized clearance sale now.
It's Riunite Ice-A-Pair time. Right now, Riunite is twice as nice on ice because it's specially priced. Ice-A-Pair of Riunite now and save.
Riunite, Riunite.
This jar is in almost every country in the world. And what's in this jar has helped beautiful women all over the world stay beautiful. The cream in this jar is cold cream. The name on this jar is Pond's Cold Cream. And what's in this bottle is the island secret of softer, younger-looking hands. Pond's Cream and Cocoa Butter Lotion with natural cocoa butter. Pond's. It helps make the world more beautiful.
Henry Fonda died this morning after 77 years. His heart failed. President Reagan mourned his passing and called him a legend. Fonda died with his wife by his side. Meredith Lewis reports from Los Angeles.
Henry Fonda received the Oscar for On Golden Pond at his home in April. He was not well enough to attend the ceremony. He died in the coronary care wing of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. He was hospitalized last Sunday for the 5th time since undergoing heart surgery last May. Fonda's wife Shirley was at his bedside. His 3 children, Jane, Amy, and Peter, were with her as she described his passing.
Henry died this morning at 5 minutes to 8. He died comfortably. He was in no pain. He had a very good night the night before, talked to all of us, was never unconscious at any time. He woke up this morning, sat up in bed, and quietly just stopped breathing.
Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda were friends since 1932, and he called on his family this afternoon.
Well, I've lost my best friend. That's number one. I think people all over the world have lost what I think is the finest actor in the world.
Fonda once told friends that since he hated going to other people's funerals, he didn't want one held for him. He donated his eyes to a New York eye bank, and in accord with his wishes, he will be cremated. Meredith Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Henry Fonda was a very American actor. He once said, "I'm still Omaha, Nebraska. I've never tried hard to get away from that." Because he was genuine, he was one of Hollywood's great actors during Hollywood's finest years. Frank Bergholzer looks back.
Oh, but Cora's terrible when he's mad.
For Henry Fonda, acting was his life. Dozens of plays, more than 80 films. The Farmer Takes a Wife, which he'd played on Broadway, became his first film.
I first committed myself to acting when I discovered that it was therapy for a very self-conscious young man. I could put on a mask, hide behind it. And I feel very lucky over the years to have been given a chance to pretend to be some pretty interesting characters.
Hanging's any man's business that's around. Kill him, I'll kill him! You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you? Like Casey says, fella ain't got a soul of his own, just a little piece of a big soul. The one big soul that belongs to everybody.
It never occurred to him to seek formal training as an actor, but he had a very strict standard for his work, as he recalled during a visit to his hometown, Omaha, Nebraska.
By the time I knew that that's what I wanted to be, an actor, I began to have the feeling that I don't want the audience to ever see the wheels go around. Make it so natural that they accept you, not that you're acting.
There was drama and turbulence in his personal life. 5 marriages, 2 children, Jane and Peter, who made waves of their own. A third, Amy, a more private person. He starred in Mr. Roberts in the film and on the stage for 4 years. Always liked the stage version better. He always, in fact, preferred working on the stage. Clarence Darrow was another of his many stage characters.
Breaker boy, John McCaffrey. That means they set you and 100 others astraddle the chute, and as a coal comes rushing down, you pick out the slate. Do they let you see the sun all day long?
His last big vehicle was the film On Golden Pond with Katharine Hepburn and his daughter Jane.
I suppose you expect me to sing something now. I'm not about to. I've been trying all day to draw some profound conclusions about living 80 years. Haven't thought of anything. Surprised I got here so fast.
It was a performance that finally brought a working actor the Academy Award as Best Actor. Frank Bergholzer, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Tom Morton is lying. Look, I can't make it into the office today. I have an awful toothache. I can't tell him I have hemorrhoids.
Honey, try Tronolane.
Instead of Preparation 8.
Tronolane works better.
Tronolane does work better. It not only reduces swelling, it relieves pain better, itching better, with a hospital-used medicine Preparation H just doesn't have.
Looks like I'll be coming to work after all. My toothache's better.
Switch to the better relief of Tronolane in Kramer Suppositories.
People who lose traveler's checks often lose other things, so they make a few calls.
Hello? I need to cancel my credit card. Hello? I gotta change my travel plans. Hello, I want to send a mailgram.
But one traveler's check.
Hello, American Express.
Has 5 special services to help do all that with one call. So you spend less time straightening out your vacation.
Thanks.
And more time enjoying it.
American Express traveler's checks. They're worth asking for by name.
Digel tops plain-add acids. We proved it in recent laboratory tests. Cutting the yellow top off a Digel tablet illustrates the results. Without its top layer, Digel consumes as much heartburn-producing acid as plain-add acids like Rolaids. What's more, Digel has the yellow top and gives you the fast, gas-calming action of simethicone. Conclusion: when you want more than plain relief, Digel tops plain-add acids.
The Coast Guard used water cannon, helicopters, and boarding parties today to break up a floating protest near Bangor, Washington. Anti-nuclear protesters were trying to stop the arrival of the first Trident submarine. 14 were arrested. Heidi Schulman reports.
At first light, the Trident submarine Ohio headed for its new home port on Hood Canal. Nuclear arms opponents vowed to stop the sub in rowboats.
You must leave immediately. If you remain, you'll be subject to arrest and your boat...
But the Coast Guard swamped their blockade before it began, turning water cannons on them while the sub was still a few miles out.
Man in the water. Get around the bow.
Demonstrators were left bailing and swimming for safety. Then a second wave of protesters towed by the Australian ketch Pacific Peacemaker. This time, the Coast Guard cut their lines, leaving the boats to float harmlessly. They then boarded the ketch armed with rifles and arrested those on board. One rubber boat broke away and tried to head off the sub, but it was quickly cut off by cutters. None of that slowed the Ohio. As it moved into the canal, some people who live along the route gathered on the beach to welcome it. And as it docked safely, Navy greeters said Trident will help assure peace.
All Americans can take great pride in this new force, a force which, if it never fires a shot in anger, will have accomplished its mission.
The Ohio's crew will be here for several weeks while the sub is armed with long-range nuclear missiles. They'll then head back out to sea. Heidi Schulman, NBC News, Bangor, Washington.
In a move which is provoking heavy criticism, the Reagan administration is using the Internal Revenue Service to help locate the small percentage of young men who have not registered for the draft. Here's Don Porter.
Under the Selective Service letterhead, but in Internal Revenue Service envelopes, the IRS is set to mail this warning letter to 250,000 draft-age men who have not yet registered. Normally prohibited by law from disclosing its wealth of taxpayer information, the IRS is in this case matching addresses to names provided by the Selective Service. Congressman Peter Pizer says that undermines the credibility of the IRS.
Probably the most important is the feeling of the American public that their tax returns are confidential between the IRS and themselves.
Internal Revenue Commissioner Roscoe Egger denies violating taxpayer privacy, adding his agency will not, for now, reveal to the Selective Service any addresses turned up by IRS computers. That's just fine with Selective Service Director Thomas Turnage.
What we're after are the results. The technique is less of an issue for us.
The technique is of great interest at the White House, where reportedly presidential aide Ed Meese joined Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger in urging IRS involvement in spurring registration compliance. The IRS Selective Service letter warns the IRS may be required in the future to turn over the addresses of non-registrants for possible prosecution. That's when Pizer and the American Civil Liberties Union expect the courts to be asked to decide what role the IRS may properly play in helping to enforce the draft registration law. Don Porter, NBC News, Washington.
By a 340 to 58 vote, the House today repudiated one of Interior Secretary Watt's policies. The House voted to prohibit oil and natural gas drilling in federally protected areas. House Interior Committee Chairman Udall said the vote on the Wilderness Protection Act was a very strong signal that the nation does not want its wilderness land disturbed. The bill now goes to the Senate.
Arthritis pain sufferers. Do you know millions of you can take aspirin, even if your stomach is aspirin sensitive, because there's Ecotrin. Look, Ecotrin is not the aspirin substitute. It's aspirin. But Ecotrin helps protect you from aspirin stomach upset with this orange safety coating. Now you can take what doctors recommend most for minor pain, aspirin, but without all aspirin stomach upset. Ecotrin, it's strong. It's orange.
When a car is small and the ride is hard and choppy, it's often called fun to drive. When it's Spartan and homely, it's something like sensible. But when a small car is actually comfortable, even luxurious, efficient, precisely built, well-equipped, and handsome, we call it a Buick.
Save up to $400 on new 82 Skyhawks now during Buick Value Days.
Sometimes even the best of days make you wish for time to get away. A silhouette time can sweep you off your feet. It's your own special time, so sit back and relax
month, there are 6 new silhouette romances. And for teenagers, First Love, America's teenage romances.
The trial of Joseph Paul Franklin, accused of ambushing and shooting former Urban League President Vernon Jordan, continued today in South Bend, Indiana. Roger O'Neill reports.
Martha Coleman, the woman who was with Vernon Jordan in Fort Wayne, Indiana the night he was shot, said today she heard a loud noise and Jordan scream, "I've been shot, call for help." Joseph Paul Franklin, who calls himself a racist, the man accused of shooting Jordan, sat impassively as Mrs. Coleman testified for more than an hour. The woman, a member of the Fort Wayne Urban League, said she then called her lawyer because, in her words, "I was frightened, and because of my past racially mixed marriage, I knew being with Jordan could be a problem, since Mr. Jordan was a prominent black leader." Mrs. Coleman said she knew how some people feel about blacks and whites being together. During the FBI investigation of the shooting, Mrs. Coleman was hypnotized to see if she could remember more, but she was never able to identify who shot Jordan. Federal prosecutors say they'll wrap up their case tomorrow. Franklin's court-appointed lawyer is expected to ask for a directed verdict of innocent based on the government's lack of direct evidence placing Franklin at the scene of the Vernon Jordan shooting. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, South Bend, Indiana.
All indications are that the president will address the nation in the next few days to ask for support for the $99 billion tax bill. And the first opponent to ask the networks for equal time was not a Democratic Party spokesman, but conservative leader Terry Dolan. In his commentary tonight, John Chancellor, who has just returned from the Middle East battle, has some thoughts on the tax battle. John?
I thought things were confused in the Middle East, but look what's happening here at home. Ronald Reagan, the king of the tax cutters, who presided over last year's biggest tax cuts in history, is now supporting a tax increase which is being called the largest tax boost in history. Taxes are not supposed to go up in a recession because they take away purchasing power and slow the recovery. Yet the administration wants to raise taxes in the worst recession in more than 40 years. Taxes almost never go up in an election year because the voters don't like it, yet the elections are just 12 weeks away. The Democrats are sitting this one out. Not a single Democrat voted for the tax bill in the Senate. The House Democrats just ignored their constitutional responsibility to originate tax legislation and wrote no bill at all. The White House says the bill isn't as bad as it appears, but Mr. Reagan's conservative friends say that it still is designed to take $99 billion out of the private sector and give it to the government. The fact is that however much the president hates all this, he's right. The government needs the extra tax money to offset deficits so big that they threaten everything. Mr. Reagan's enemies say his policies caused these deficits. He doesn't agree. But to try to get the deficits down, he needs more taxes, and to do that, he's got to desert his friends and his economic philosophy. Tough times for Ronald Reagan. Roger?
The latest NBC News Associated Press poll conducted this week shows that nearly half the adult Americans sampled think President Reagan has had enough time to fix the economy, has not done so, and they now think his program is a failure. On the tax bill, the public is almost evenly divided. 49% approve, 43% disapprove.
Mr. Columbus, traveling far?
To the New World.
Loaded with gold, huh?
Too risky. We carry Bank America traveler's checks. World money.
Bank America traveler's checks?
Bank America. In leading world currencies, accepted in over 160 countries.
And if they're lost?
Lost? Never say lost. Besides, they're refundable in 40,000 places around the world. It is round, you know.
Bank America traveler's checks.
From Land O'Lakes country, coming home.
Home to the good things.
Coming home.
Home to good fresh country flavors like buttery tasting Land O'Lakes margarine. Tastes dairy fresh because it's made with fresh skim milk.
Coming home to the buttery flavor, to a taste you'll understand. Come on home to the margarine that comes from Butterland.
Land O'Lakes margarine, from America's #1 butter maker.
200 years. That's how long the great American home of John Paul Jones has beaten the weather. To help protect it from any more, Sears brought the Weather Beater. Durability for years to come. Weather Beater flat exterior, now $9.99. Save $7. And a special bargain, fashion flat interior, washable one-coat coverage, just $9.99. Save $4. For great paint and value, you can count on Sears.
Douglas Kiker keeps moving west along Route 30, and tonight he's in Warsaw, Indiana, where he spent a day at an establishment unique in American life.
Northeastern Indiana, lake country. There are lots of familiar places along Route 30 where a hungry traveler can stop to eat here. Places so familiar they could be anywhere on any highway. But turn left off the bypass, head down Center Street in Warsaw, Indiana, and right in the middle of town, you'll find a place that's a little different.
13. And there's your red 4. Just told you had the red 5. Get it, Jay.
Greetings, food, dominoes, cigars. It's the town hangout with a spirited domino game that never seems to end.
I've been coming in here for 45 years.
45 years?
Yeah. I'm only 46.
Greetings is not part of any fast food chain, not part of anything, except the town of Warsaw and the men who live here.
You come in, you get your coffee, you sit and you get caught up on the local news.
You know what's happening here before the newspaper gets it sometimes.
It's not a bar, not even beer. Greetings is an old cigar store which over half a century has evolved into a short order cafe. The atmosphere inside, loud and raucous.
If you want a quiet, peaceful cup of coffee, go to McDonald's. Don't come here.
It's the place where people come to read the papers, exchange local gossip, and kid the current owner, Burley Berg, about the quality of the food.
I haven't heard one complaint.
Come on. Women are not banned, but the regulars still talk about the last time one came in.
You know, it's a funny thing. Men have to be together for some reason or other. I don't know why. And women, a few of them get together, but they don't bum around with each other all the time.
Solve everything in the county, politics and all in there.
Yeah, politics, religion, anything. Women, we could tell you how to understand. Well, no, we couldn't either, could we?
Beyond that, Greetings is pure small-town democracy.
You got bankers, you got undertakers, you got doctors, you got working men, you got farmers, you got laborers, you got everything. I told my wife one time, I said, a kid would work in there about 6 or 8 months, be like sending him to college for about 3 years. He'd learn more about life.
Most of your small towns around here had a room like this, but they've slowly disappeared.
That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because they've lost a lot of their fellowship that way.
Fellowship?
Yeah.
They come here for the camaraderie, for the fellowship. It's their place, it's their thing. They belong. Any McDonald's will sell you a hamburger, but you can't belong there. Douglas Kiker, NBC News, along Route 30 in Warsaw, Indiana.
That's Nightly News for Thursday. I'm Roger Mudd in Washington.
And I'm Tom Brokaw in Jerusalem. Good night for all of us at NBC News.